So as I'm sure you've heard by now, Rush Limbaugh passed away at the age of 70 this week. And I listened to a lot of the obituaries, and there was a lot of positive and a lot of negative, and people celebrating and clapping that he's finally gone, and other people mourning the loss of a great spokesperson for conservatism. You might be asking, what is my interest? Or because I obviously differ with Rush Limbaugh on some key areas, for example, support for Donald Trump. And so what is it that I wanted to talk to you about? Well, I'd love your thoughts on Rush Limbaugh and what you thought of him. The reason that I wanted to just take a minute, because I know he was such a polarizing character, but I owe Rush something. And this has to do with what we were talking about in the last segment, making people think. And when they hear about conservatism, making them go, whoa, I never thought of it like that. See, Rush Limbaugh had an incredible ability to articulate conservatism, unlike few people that I have ever seen. And unfortunately, he did it in a very polarizing way. But a lot of that was shtick, right? A lot of that was part of the show. But the reason I know this is because I grew up in a household that had no political instruction whatsoever. I remember one conversation with my stepdad. We're sitting at the dinner table. I must have been high school age. I don't know. And he asked me, do you think that you are liberal or conservative? I had never heard this terminology in my life. And so I thought to myself, well, liberal seems more understanding, like more accepting. And so I just spouted out liberal. And he went off on me. Like, how could you be a liberal? I mean, just went off on me. And I'm sitting there going, what did I do? Okay, I'm a conservative. I even know what that was. So I grew up, no political thought. Okay. Many of you know my background. I dropped out of high school. I ended up homeless on the streets of California for a while. And then I got cleaned up and I served a mission for the LDS Church. And then I came home and I got married. And so I was 22, 23 years old. Never had a political discussion in my life, except for that one with my stepdad. Didn't care about this country. I didn't care about the Constitution. I didn't care about the founding fathers. I didn't know anything about it, and I was not interested in it. Probably at that point, I was going to live my life, my entire life, without a care or concern in my rights or freedoms and how those are derived and why they're important. So I get a job right out of the mission field, just newly married, with my brother. This is in Southern California. My brother has a roofing company. So we're going around and I'm with him every day and we're up repairing wooden shake roofs. And I wanted to listen to music while we're driving and while we're on the roof. But he didn't want to do that. He insisted on listening to this brand new talk show host that was just making it big, that was making all kinds of noise. And I'm like, talk radio? That is gross. Can you imagine? I'm like, that is disgusting. Why would you want to... Excuse me. Hang on a sec. I thought to myself, why would you want to listen to talk radio? That is the most boring thing I could ever think of. But he was the boss. So there we are, up on the roof and driving from job to job, listening to this talk show host. You've already guessed his name, Rush Limbaugh. So I'm driving around listening to Rush. And say what you want about Rush, about how he was polarizing or his delivery or how he would like to dig and twist a little bit. The one thing about Rush is he always twisted my gears. Always made me think. So I'd be driving along and I'd go, wow, I never thought of that. And all of a sudden, I started feeling an awakening inside. I started to get a glimpse of my rights. I started to get some flavor for how this country came into being. I started to get a perspective on the two different prevailing ideologies, liberalism and conservatism. And as a result, I started researching on my own. And I started having discussions with my brother, and we would argue. And then I started having discussions with my wife. And then I'd have discussions with other family members. And all of a sudden, in my early 20s, I turn into this guy who is concerned about his country and is concerned about rights and freedoms, concerned about taxation, concerned about gun control, concerned about illegal immigration, concerned about all these things. And this is all happening because I'm listening to one guy, Rush Limbaugh. Now, after Rush was another guy, Sean Hannity. Now, Sean Hannity never made me think a unique thought in my life. But Sean, at least back then, was the guy who had the guests on. Rush Limbaugh never had guests on his show. But Sean would have on the newsmakers that Rush would talk about. And so I'd listen to Rush, and then I'd listen to Sean. And then I wanted to call Rush. And so I would dial Rush, and I thought I would get through. And I must have called Rush's show 1,000 times. Never got through. And racked up a cell phone bill trying to get through to Rush Limbaugh. But from there, I started this journey. And it's a journey that I'm still on today. A journey to find out truth, a journey to learn about this country. I developed this voracious appetite for our founding fathers, to where I don't read fiction at all. I've never read fiction. I read biographies. I read history. I read about the wars. I read about everything that I can get my hands on. And I started to develop opinions that were not just based upon what a talk radio show host told me, but based upon my own research and my own information. And so you can see that as we learn of Rush Limbaugh's passing, you can see why this would have a little bit of an impact on me. Because he started me on a journey that I am still fully on 100% today. And that was how many decades ago? So when I talk to you about needing somebody who can articulate conservatism in a way that makes people think about what we believe, as opposed to just assassinating people for thinking differently than what we believe, a lot of that is born from Rush Limbaugh and another person who I've studied and watched very carefully, and that's Ronald Reagan. And from those two primary people come the root and the foundation of who I am today. Now, admittedly, there came a point in my life where I heard examples of Rush defending the indefensible. And especially with Donald Trump, Rush regularly would defend the indefensible. And so what happened is I saw him as this conservative icon and somebody who taught me about conservatism. But there were key moments with Bill Clinton and other times with Obama where I heard him defending the indefensible because he was a Republican. And those are moments that really gave me pause, and they really frustrated me, and they saddened me. And because of it, there actually came a point when I stopped listening to Rush altogether. But there would be times when I'd drive along and I'd turn on the radio and there he was. And I'm telling you, any given day, any monologue, he would still make me think and still make me question and wonder, am I on the right track here? Now, what's interesting is because of Rush, I started to develop this belief and desire to want to be a talk show host. So he wasn't just inspiring me when it comes to our government and constitution. I thought to myself, man, I would love to do what he does. And I think I could do it. Of course, I wonder how many people think that. And so it wasn't until about 8 years later that I came across a radio station in Nevada, in Las Vegas, that will put anybody on the air. It's a little 5,000 watt station, and it's all infomercials top to bottom. But they told me if I write them a check, they'll give me a show on Friday mornings at 9 o'clock. And so I would leave my day job, and I would go, and I wrote them a check, and I turned on the microphone with no support, no coaching, nothing. And I started doing a talk show host at 9 a.m. on Friday mornings. And then I would go out and sell my own advertising. And then I sold enough advertising to where I could buy the noon hour every single day on that radio station. So now I was leaving my day job for lunch, for my lunch break, and I would do a talk show, and then I would go back to my day job. And from there, I was actually heard by the main program director of KXNT in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is the station that had Rush and Hannity on it. And they offered me a weekend show. And then from there, I went to Dallas to do a full-time radio show. None of that. And that was 20 years ago. So I've been doing talk radio for 20 years. Now, does any of that happen without Rush? No. None of it. Not my love of country, not my love of conservatism, not my love of talk radio, and not the career that I have been so blessed and privileged to be a part of for the last 20 years. So yes, he was controversial. Yes, he said and did things that I was embarrassed by. And yes, he turned a lot of people off from conservatism. But a huge part of who I am today, sitting before you right now at 11:30 at night, is a direct product of Rush Limbaugh. So for me, hearing of his passing was a little bit more than just hearing that a talk radio show host had died. This was a man who had a profound impact on my life. And as I said, I stopped listening to him about 10 years ago because of defending the indefensible. But who I am and what I do and what I continue to love and do was that guy. And that's what we need in our leaders. That's what we need. People who can articulate conservatism. Hopefully do so in a less polarizing way. Maybe. But I come before you tonight with some gratitude for this man and for his life. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I don't know how many of you knew how I got into talk radio or knew my history of how I even started this journey so many years ago. But without my brother wanting to listen to this guy, Rush Limbaugh, as we were roofing, I don't know where I would have ended up. I don't know what I'd be doing today. I'd like to think I still would have found this path some other way. But it just all of these thoughts kind of rushed through my head as I learned of his passing this week. This is Mike on Facebook. Love him or hate him, Rush did an incredible job at getting a message out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't his show among the highest in listenership in the country for many years? By far, Mike. He is credited with saving AM radio. It was going to die before Rush became syndicated. And there was no other talk show host that had the listenership that he had. I think the only one that came close and an entirely different audience was Howard Stern. This is Brett. I didn't listen to Rush, and from what I heard, didn't agree with him on everything, but respect him for the good he did for conservatism. Still, I believe JayMac and Doug Wright are more reasonable and much better for society. There was a time, I will tell you, Brett, there was a time when I was diehard Rush, and I was all in. But in my quest to follow my principles, instead of just blindly following my party, I had to depart ways from him. And it sounds like you're kind of in that same viewpoint. This is Blake. Rush combined brilliance of someone like Milton Friedman and entertainment and comedy. I loved Rush. He instilled confidence in me to buck my college professors. Yeah. I wish some of those controversial parts weren't there. He could have influenced and helped a lot more people. But that was him. That was his character. That was his personality. But I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that man. I wouldn't be doing this, that's for sure. Wouldn't be broadcasting at 11:30 at night on a Thursday night. So there you go. Take that for what it is. I just thought I wanted to share with you how this person, how somebody who's controversial can actually be a positive influence on people. Let's see. We've been going now for about an hour and 6 minutes. I have some did you know stories here. These are stories that are fun or interesting, or maybe you didn't hear, or maybe you did hear, and we need to talk about them. Do you guys? Are you still want to hang out a little bit longer and do some did you know, or should we wrap up and save these for another time? I mean, we're here. Might as well. I do still want to try and catch the Lakers play the Nets tonight, but it is getting late, so I don't know if we're going to be able to pull that off. What the heck? Why don't we do it? Mike on Facebook says he's down. He's good for it. All right. So let's give it a little bit of an intro here. Make sure I'm in the right place. Blake says go for it. All right, Blake, we're going to do it.